Hello everyone and welcome to the 5-Minute German A2 course. In today's video, we will take a look at the verb werden. So the verb werden is a very important verb in German language and it has different uses, one of which is to create the passive form. And it is important for you to understand this verb and how it is used because you will be needing it in the A2 exam as well as in daily conversations. So in this video, I will explain the verb werden and how you can use it in different situations, including the passive form. And I will also give you a lot of examples so that you don't have any problem in understanding it. So let's not waste any time and let's get started. So werden is a very important verb in German and it has different uses. So it is used to express a change of state. It is also used to talk about the future or create the future tense. We also use it to create the passive form, and it is also used as conjunctive zwei. So conjunctive zwei is used to make suggestions or requests in a polite way. But the concept of conjunctive zwei is not part of A2. Rather, it will be done later in B1 and B2. That's why we will skip the concept of conjunctive zwei and we will focus on the first three parts in this lesson, which are how to use werden to express a change of state, how to talk about the future with werden, and how to create the passive form. So let's start with the first use of werden, which is to express a change of state. Now when werden is used to express a change of state, then it can be translated in English as to become. And in a sentence, werden is used as the main verb. So this means that it will come at the second position in conjugated form, just like any other verb. So before we take a look at different examples with werden, let's first take a look at the conjugations of werden. So the conjugations of werden in presence or present tense are ich werde, du wirst, sie wird, wir würden, ihr würdet, sie würden, and sie würden. Now let's take a look at an example with the third person singular, which is sie wird. Now suppose it is daytime where the sun is shining and it is bright everywhere. And after some time, the sun starts to set. So it is now becoming dark. So this is a change of state which is happening from light to dark. So we can describe this change of state using werden as es wird jetzt dunkel. It is getting dark now. Es wird jetzt dunkel. So you see that we have shown a change of state in present tense over here, which is currently ongoing. So it is not completely dark, but it is still in process of getting dark. Let's take another example. So we have the sentence, Dein Deutsch wird besser. Your German is getting better. Dein Deutsch wird besser. So you see over here, we have again expressed a change of state using the verb werden, and that is that your German was not very good before, but now it is getting better. Another sentence which is commonly used when somebody is not feeling well is es wird besser. It will get better. Es wird besser. So you see this sentence also shows a change of state, that maybe things are not so good right now, but they will get better. And this sentence shows a change of state which will happen in the future. So you see that we can use werden to express a change of state which is currently happening or something which will happen in the future as well. Now let's take a look at another example. So suppose that yesterday or gestern it was really hot, and today or heute the forecast is that it will get cold. So this is again a change of state. So we can describe this with werden as es wird heute kalt. It will get cold today. So you see how we have used werden again to show the change in temperature. We can also use the verb werden in questions. So suppose that somebody asks, wann wird 18? When will he be 18? So this is also a change of state, that he is maybe 17 years old right now, and somebody asks that when will he be 18? And we can answer this with werden as wird im August 18. He will be 18 in August. So this is also a change of state which will happen in the future. Now all the examples that we have seen up till now have been with the third person singular case, which is wird. And the reason for this is that this form is the most commonly used in daily life. So you will see a lot of sentences with the third person singular form, which is wird. Now let's take another example. So suppose that there is this little girl and her dream is to become a doctor. So this is also a change of state. So she can express this using werden as well. So she will say, Ich werde Ärztin. I will become a doctor or female doctor. Ich werde Ärztin. We can also write this with modal verbs as well. So with the modal verb wollen, the sentence will be Ich will Ärztin werden. I want to become a doctor. And over here we have followed the rules of the modal verb, that is that the modal verb comes at second position in conjugated form and the main verb goes to the last position in infinitive form, which in this case is werden. So you see that you can use the verb werden to express what your dreams are or what you want to become when you grow old. So now we have learned that we can use the verb werden to express a change of state which is currently ongoing or in the present as well as in the future. Now if you want to express a change of state which happened in the past, then you can also use the verb werden. However, for the past, you will not use the conjugations of werden in presence or present tense. Rather, you will use the conjugations of werden in praeteritum or past tense. So let's take a look at the conjugations of werden in praeteritum. So the conjugations in praeteritum for werden are Ich wurde, du wurdest, sie wurde, wir wurden, ihr wurdet, sie wurden, and sie wurden. Let's take a look at an example. So we have the sentence wurde gestern 18. He became 18 yesterday. Wurde gestern 18. So you see that this is a change of state which has already happened in the past. Another example can be Meine Großmutter wurde alt. My grandmother became old or has gotten old. Meine Großmutter wurde alt. So this means that she was young before and now she has already become old. Now suppose that the young girl that we saw earlier has already become a doctor. Then we can express this as Sie wurde Ärztin. She became a doctor. Sie wurde Ärztin. So you see that we have shown the change of state which has already happened. So using the conjugations of werden in praeteritum is one way to express a change of state which happened in the past. Another way to express this is using the perfect form, for which we need the participe zwei form. And the participe zwei form for werden is geworden. So an example can be Meine Großmutter ist alt geworden, which also means my grandmother became old. Meine Großmutter ist alt geworden. So you see that this sentence is in the perfect form and we have used the participe zwei form of werden over here. And one thing to keep in mind is that when we create the perfect form with werden, then we will use sein as the helping verb and not haben. So this is something which I also mentioned in the A1 course, but since werden is not part of the A1 course, that's why I did not go into too much detail. But just keep in mind that in the perfect form, we will always use sein as the helping verb with werden. Let's take another example. So I have the sentence Ich bin müde geworden. I have gotten tired. Ich bin müde geworden. So you see that this is also how you can express a change of state in the perfect form. So these are the different conjugations for the verb werden. Now one important point that you have to keep in mind when using werden to express a change of state is that it is only used with a noun or adjective. And if you take a look at the examples that we have seen until now, you will see that we have used werden only with adjectives or nouns and not with other verbs. This is because werden in these sentences acts as the main verb, and that's why we don't use any other verb. So this is how you can use the verb werden to express a change of state, and as we just saw that in this case it is only used with nouns or adjectives. Now let's take a look at the second use of werden, which is to talk about the future. Now when we use werden to talk about the future, then it can be translated as will in English. So an example of this can be I will learn German. So you see how will is used in this sentence. So it is used in a similar way in German as well. Now when we use werden in a sentence to talk about the future, then werden comes at second position in conjugated form and the main verb goes to the end in infinitive form. And this sentence structure is similar to modal verbs because when we use modal verbs, then the main verb also goes to the end in infinitive form. And we will see this in different examples right now. Now one more important point is that since we are going to talk about the future, that's why we will not use the Präteritum and participe soi forms of werden in this case, because these are used to talk about the past. And for the future, we will only use the present forms, which you see over here. Now let's take an example in which we will use werden to talk about the future. So an example can be Ich werde Deutsch lernen. I will learn German. Ich werde Deutsch lernen. Now you see that this sentence tells us that I will learn German sometime in the future. It can be tomorrow, next week, next month, or even next year. So no time is specified, but it will be in the future. And you see that in this example, the verb werden comes at second position in conjugated form, and the main verb, which was lernen, goes to the end in infinitive form. Now we can also write this sentence in another way. So suppose that somebody asks you the question, Ab wann wirst du Deutsch lernen? From when will you start to learn German? Now in this question, you are also being asked about something that you will do in the future. So that's why we have again used the second person singular form of werden, which is wirst. Now you can answer this by saying, Ab morgen werde ich Deutsch lernen. From tomorrow, I will learn German. Ab morgen werde ich Deutsch lernen. Now in this answer, you have given a specific time, which is from tomorrow or tomorrow onwards. And this is also correct. So from these examples, we see that we can use werden to talk about the future, both with time and without time. Now let's take a look at another example, which is without time. So we have the sentence, wird nach Portugal reisen. He will travel to Portugal. Wird nach Portugal reisen. Now in this sentence, we have also not mentioned the time when he will travel to Portugal. So it can be any time in the future. And we can write the same sentence with time as wird im Sommer nach Portugal reisen. He will travel to Portugal in summer. Now in this sentence, we have mentioned a specific time, which is im Sommer. Let's take another example. So this is without time. Wenn du Hilfe brauchst, würde ich dir helfen. When you need help, I will help you. So in this sentence, we are also talking about the future without giving any specific time. So whenever you need help, I will help you. So this is how you can use werden to talk about the future. Now we have seen that we can talk about the future with werden both with time and without time. Now in German, there is another way to talk about the future, and that is with the present tense. However, the important point over here is that the present tense can only be used with time to talk about the future. So an example for this can be, Ab morgen lerne ich Deutsch. From tomorrow, I will learn German. Now in this sentence, you see that we have the verb in presence. So this is the first person conjugation for the verb lernen. And we have also specified the time. So when we say that from tomorrow I will learn German, then this is an action which will happen in the future. That's why this example describes the future. Now if we use the present tense without time, then the sentence will be Ich lerne Deutsch, which translates to I am learning German. So this is not the future. This is an activity which is currently ongoing. So it is in the present tense. Let's take another example. So let's take an example without time first. So I have the sentence, Ich werde das Buch lesen. I will read the book. So you see we have the verb werden at second position and the main verb which is lesen goes to the end in infinitive form. And the same example with time can be Ich werde das Buch nächste Woche lesen. I will read the book next week. So both of these sentences talk about the future. In one we have given a specific time which is nächste Woche, and in the other we don't have any specific time. Now if we want to talk about the future with present tense, then it will be liest das Buch nächste Woche. He will read the book next week. So again you see that we have the conjugated form of the verb lesen in presence or present tense, and we have also given a specific time which is nächste Woche. And because of this time, this sentence describes the future. Now if I write the same sentence without time, then it will be liest das Buch, he reads the book, and this describes an activity in the present tense. So from these examples, we see that the difference between talking about the future with present tense and talking about the future with the verb werden are that if we use the present tense, then we need to give time information. And if we use werden, then time information is not mandatory. So we can also use it without time. And the present tense is used only for scheduled events, whereas werden can be used for uncertain events as well. So keep this in mind whenever you want to create the future tense. So this is how you can use werden to talk about the future. Now let's see how we can create the passive form with werden. But before we create the passive form, let's first take a look at what is the passive form. And we will understand this with an example. So suppose that somebody asks you, Was machst du? What are you doing? And suppose that you are cooking food, then you can answer this by saying, Ich koche das Essen. I am cooking the food. Now another question can be, Wer kocht das Essen? Who is cooking the food? And you can also use the same answer for this question as well, which is, Ich koche das Essen. Now in these sentences that you see over here, the focus is on the person who is doing the action. So in the first question we said, Was machst du? We want to know what you are doing. In the second question it was asked, Wer kocht das Essen? Who is cooking the food? And in the answer we said that Ich koche das Essen. So you see that the focus was more on the person who was doing the action. And sentences in which the focus is on the person doing the action are called active voice. So all of these sentences that you see over here are in active voice. And we have learned these kind of sentences until now in both A1 and A2. Now let's take a look at another example. So suppose that you are very hungry and you order some food online. And after ordering, you are now waiting for your food to arrive. But it has already been 15 minutes and the food has not arrived. So you decide to call the restaurant to ask them about the food. So you call them and you say, Where is my food? So the person from the restaurant answers your call and says, The food is being prepared. It will be delivered in 10 minutes. Now you have all the information that you needed. So you say, Okay, thanks. Now let's take a look at these two sentences over here because these are a little bit different. So in the sentence, the food is being prepared. We don't know who is preparing the food. So we have no information about the person who is doing the action. And the reason is that this is not important because when you called the restaurant, it was not important for you who was cooking the food. The thing which was important for you was the food. Similarly, in the other sentence, we know that the food will be delivered in 10 minutes, but we don't know who will deliver the food. And this was also not important for us. For us, it was important that the food be delivered. So you see that in both of these sentences, the focus is on the object and the subject is not important. So such kind of sentences in which the focus is on the object are sentences which are in the passive voice. So let's do a side-by-side comparison of active voice and passive voice. So we saw that in active voice, the focus is on the subject. For example, I am preparing the food, whereas in passive voice, the focus is on the object and the subject is not important. And we saw the example, the food is being prepared. So in this sentence, we don't know who is preparing the food because it is not important. The only thing which is important is that the food is being prepared. So I hope that now the difference between active voice and passive voice is clear. Now let's take a look at the sentence structure of passive in German with the verb werden. So whenever you want to create a sentence in the passive voice, then the object usually comes at position number 1. But the important thing over here is that the object will come with the nominative article. And I will explain this to you with some examples as well. Then at position number 2, we will have the conjugated form of the verb werden. After that, we will have some other information if needed. So this is optional. And at the end, we will have the participe zwei form of the verb. This is the form which you also used when you want to create the perfect form. Now, one more important point over here is that in case of passive, the verb werden is used as a helping verb. So it can have different meanings and the meaning depends upon the context in which it is used. Similar to haben and sein when they are used in the perfect form. Now let's take a look at different examples. So an example sentence in the active voice can be Ich koche das Essen. I am cooking the food. Now I am giving you an example in the active voice so that we can do a good comparison. Now in this sentence, das Essen is the object. Now let's create the passive form. So the passive form will be Das Essen wird gekocht. The food is being cooked. Now if you take a look at the sentence structure above, then you see that at position number 1, we have the object, then we have the conjugated form of werden for third person singular, which is wird, and the verb kochen, which means to cook, goes to the last position in participe zwei form. So you see that if you only know the object in the active form, then you can create the passive form easily. Let's take another example. So suppose that this toilet is being cleaned and you know that the cleaning lady is the one who is cleaning the toilet. Then the sentence in active form will be Die Putzfrau putzt die Toilette. The cleaning lady cleans the toilet. And in this sentence, the Toilette is the object. Now we can write this sentence in the passive form as Die Toilette wird geputzt. The toilet is being cleaned. So you see that we have the object which is die Toilette at position number 1. At position number 2, we have the conjugated form of werden and geputzt is the participe zwei form of the verb putzen, which means to clean. And you also see that we don't have any subject in the passive form because as we know that the focus is on the object. Let's take another example. So we have the sentence Mein Vater schreibt den Brief. My father writes the letter. Now in this sentence we have used den Brief because brief is masculine, so it is their brief, and since it is the object over here, that's why we have used the accusative article, which is den. Now if we write this in passive form, then we will write this as Der Brief wird geschrieben. The letter is being written. Now you see in the passive form, we have used der Brief, where there is the nominative article. And this is the point which I mentioned, that in passive, we will use the nominative article with the object. And the rest is the same, so we have the conjugated form of werden at position number 2 and the participe zwei form of the verb schreiben, which is geschrieben. Let's take another example. So I have the sentence Ich repariere den Computer. I repair the computer. Again, you see that we have used an accusative article over here because computer is their computer. So what will be the sentence when I write it in passive? So the sentence will be Der Computer wird repariert. The computer is being repaired. And you see that I have used the nominative article for computer over here, which is there. Now in all of these examples of passive that we have seen over here, we have not mentioned the person who is doing the action because he or she is not important. However, there is a way in which you can add the person who is doing the action in passive. So how will you do this? So if I want to mention that the computer is being repaired by me, then I can write the sentence in passive as Der Computer wird von mir repariert, which means the computer is being repaired by me. So you see that I have added von mir to show that it is being repaired by me. And you can use von with any other personal pronoun or the name of a person if you want to mention them in the passive voice. And I have used mir over here because von is a dative preposition. And after that you will use the personal pronoun in dative. However, this type of sentence in which we also mention the person who is doing the action in passive is not very common, and it is mostly used in writing. So I have given you this example over here just so that you know that you can see the person who is doing the action in passive as well. But this is just for your information and you don't have to use it. Now let's take a look at a few examples from daily life. So these are sentences in passive that you might see. So an example is Die Webseite wird geladen. The website is being loaded. Die Webseite wird geladen. So this sentence is also in passive. Another common example which you might hear on the telephone or on your mobile apps is Ihre Anfrage wird bearbeitet, which means your request is being processed. Ihre Anfrage wird bearbeitet. So these are some commonly used daily life examples in passive which you might come across. Now in all the examples that we have seen until now, we have used the third person singular conjugation of the verb werden, which is SC wird. And the reason is that this is the most commonly used conjugation in passive. But you can also create the passive with the other forms as well. And we will take a look at a few examples over here so that you know how to use the passive with the other personal pronouns as well. And we will use the verb einladen, which means to invite. So an example with the first person singular will be Ich wurde eingeladen, which means I am invited or I am being invited. With second person singular, it will be Du wirst eingeladen, you are invited. With second person singular, it will be Du wirst eingeladen, you are invited or you are being invited. With third person singular, it will be Sie wird eingeladen, he, it or she is invited. With first person plural, it will be Wir wurden eingeladen, we are invited. With second person plural, it will be Ihr wurdet eingeladen, you all are invited or are being invited. And with third person plural and the formal way, it will be Sie wurden eingeladen. They are invited or they are being invited. So you see that the passive can also be created with the other personal pronouns as well. Now you can also create the passive in preteritum or in the past. And for that, you will use the conjugation of werden in preteritum, which are the ones that you see over here. Now the participe zwei form of werden when it is used for passive is worden. However, this is an advanced topic and not part of the A2 course. That's why we will not take a look at it right now. Now let's take a look at some examples of passive in preteritum. So an example can be Das Auto wurde repariert, which means the car was repaired. We don't know who repaired it, but we know that the car was repaired. Another example can be Der Brief wurde schon geschickt. The letter was already sent. Der Brief wurde schon geschickt. So this is also an example in the past. And we have used the third person singular conjugation of werden in the past, which is wurde. Let's take another example. Das Auto wurde in Deutschland hergestellt, which means the car was manufactured in Germany. So hergestellt is the participe zwei form of herstellen, which means to manufacture. Das Auto wurde in Deutschland hergestellt. Let's take an example with the plural. So an example can be Die Pakete wurden gestern geliefert. The packages were delivered yesterday. Die Pakete wurden gestern geliefert. So you see that the passive form in preteritum is very easy. You just need to know the conjugations and the rest of the sentence structure remains the same as it was for presents. Now let's take a look at how we can create the passive with modal verbs. Now whenever we use a modal verb in a sentence, then we know that the modal verb comes at second position in conjugated form and the main verb goes to the last position in infinitive form. So let's see what happens in case of passive. So a sentence in passive without a modal verb can be Das Fenster wird geöffnet. The window is being opened. Now when we write this sentence with the modal verb können, then it will be Das Fenster kann geöffnet werden. The window can be opened. Now you see that the modal verb können comes at second position in conjugated form, and the verb werden, which was at second position in the original sentence, will go to the last position in infinitive form. Let's take another example. So we have the sentence Das Auto wird repariert. The car is being repaired. Now if we write this with the modal verb müssen, then it will be Das Auto muss repariert werden. The car must be repaired. Now in this sentence as well, the modal verb comes at second position in conjugated form, and the verb at second position goes to the end of the sentence in infinitive form. So wird becomes werden. Another commonly used sentence with the modal verb dürfen, which you might come across, is Der Fehler darf nicht wiederholt werden. The mistake must not be repeated. Der Fehler darf nicht wiederholt werden. Now this is also a sentence in passive, and since we have used the modal verb at second position, that's why the main verb goes to the last position in infinitive form. So this is how you can create the passive with modal verbs. Now let's take a look at a few examples of how we can create the passive with Nebensatz connectors. So Nebensatz connectors are words such as weil, which means because, thus, which means that, when, which means when or if, and so on. If you don't know what Nebensatz connectors are and how they are used, then I have created a complete video on this topic, and I will link it in the description below. You can take a look at it as well. Now when we use Nebensatz connectors, the rule is that the verb at second position goes to the end. Now if we have a sentence in passive, which is Mein Auto wird repariert, my car is being repaired, and we want to write this sentence with weil, then we can write it as Ich komme heute mit dem Zug, weil mein Auto repariert wird. I will come with train today because my car is being repaired. Now you see that in this sentence we have used weil in the Nebensatz. That's why the verb wird goes to the last position. Let's take another example. So we have the sentence Die E-Mail wurde schon geschickt. The email has already been sent. Now over here we have the verb wurde at second position. Now if we write this sentence with das, then it will be Ich weiß, dass die E-Mail schon geschickt wurde. I know that the email has already been sent. Now because we have das in this sentence, that's why wurde goes to the last position. So you see that these sentences are also similar to all the other sentences that we have seen with Nebensatz connectors, but I just wanted to give you some examples so that you know how they are used with the passive case as well. So this is how you can create the passive form with the verb werden, and in this case we saw that it is used with the participe zwei form of the verb. Now let's do a quick recap of what we have learned. So we learned that we can use werden to express a change of state, and this is used with nouns or adjectives. So some examples for this that we saw were Ich werde Ärztin, I will become a doctor, a female doctor, and Es wird heute kalt, it will become cold today. So you see, in both cases we have expressed a change of state. We can also use werden to talk about the future, and this is used with verbs. So we saw the example Ich werde Deutsch lernen, which means I will learn German. And in this case, you see that the verb werden comes at second position in conjugated form, and the main verb goes to the last position in infinitive form. Now we can also use werden with a specific time. So we can say Ab morgen werde ich Deutsch lernen. And in this sentence, ab morgen tells us the time from when we will start to learn German. And we saw that we can also create the passive form with the verb werden, and in this case we will use the participe zwei form of the main verb. So some examples for this were Das Essen wird gekocht, which means the food is being cooked, and Der Brief wird geschrieben, the letter is being written. So you see both gekocht and geschrieben are the participe zwei forms of the main verb. And with this we come to the end of the lesson. So great job. So now my suggestion would be that try to practice using the verb werden in the different cases that we have learned, because you will use this in the writing exam as well as in the speaking part to make different sentences. Also, in daily life, people use this verb to talk about the future. So if you know it, then it will be easier for you to understand what the other person is saying and also give the correct answers. So I hope that this video was helpful for you. If you have any questions or feedback, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for your time, and we will see each other in the next video.